Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges with a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold. You can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low-price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome to Crossroads. The U.S. Attorney's Office has made its first arrest for the charge of smuggling greenhouse gases. You heard that right. A man who was traveling from Mexico to the U.S. is being accused right now of bringing hydrofluorocarbons into the United States. Now, if you've never heard of this, you might actually have it. The product is very commonly used in air conditioners and refrigerators. In fact, if you have an air conditioner in your home or a system for it, you might actually be in possession of hydrofluorocarbons. But these were actually banned under the Biden administration. And the man who these were discovered in his car is facing a maximum of 45 years in prison. And the U.S. Attorney's Office even issued a video saying this will likely be the first of many arrests still to come on the new laws on environmental crime. Folks, let me show you the direct release from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Intended to curb the use of greenhouse gases and slow climate change. He violated a religion, folks. It says this is the first prosecution in the United States to include charges related to the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act of 2020, the AIM Act. And it says the AIM Act prohibits the importation of hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs, commonly used in refrigerants without allowances issued by the Environmental Protection Agency. Now, let me just read you the summary of his charges. And this is basically how the story went. He was driving a car and he had some of these in the back of his car, probably for like somebody to replace, fix a refrigeration system or an HVAC system with. It looked like he had tools in his car, and he had, of course, a tarp over the tools, and among the tools were these things used to fix HVAC systems. And they made it sound like he's like hiding them, under all of his tools and stuff. This is what he's facing for this. Count one. Conspiracy, maximum penalty 2 to 6. Importation contrary to law, maximum penalty 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. Count 7 to 13. Sale of merchandise imported contrary to law, 20 years in prison and $250,000 fine. This guy is facing a maximum of 45 years in prison for climate crimes. And again, folks, I just want to emphasize, hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs, these are really common. If you have an air conditioner or a refrigerator in your home or your business, it's very possible that you're also in possession of them. They're common in homes and businesses. And just to emphasize this, the U.S. Attorney's Office even published a video announcing the arrest. They say this is the first arrest of its kind, but it won't be the last. Let me show you.
Hello, I'm Tara McGrath, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of California. This office is at the forefront of environmental prosecutions, and today is a significant milestone for our country. This is the first time that the Department of Justice is prosecuting someone for illegally importing greenhouse gases, and it will not be the last. We are using every means possible to protect our planet from the harm caused by toxic pollutants, including bringing criminal charges.
Now, look, folks, you have people smuggling drugs getting less of a sentence, threat than this. You have people doing human trafficking who are facing less pushback than this. But of course, this is the new world, and we see now what is actually prosecuted. Now, in other news, of course, Super Tuesday has come to a close, and Donald J. Trump is now the front runner for the Republican Party, which means, folks, we have a repeat of Biden versus Trump. We're back in 2020. And of course, Joe Biden is maybe going to campaign again. We'll see. Maybe he's going to pull out his 2020 strategy and stay in his basement and hide his strength and bide his time, because it seems Joe Biden has a Sun Tzu strategy for dealing with Trump. Washington Examiner says that President Joe Biden's campaign is reportedly looking to try a new approach with former President Donald Trump. Biden, they say, is reportedly planning to goad Trump into going haywire in public, according to a report from Axios. It says the president is facing a rematch with his 2020 opponent, but unlike 4 years ago, he is behind Trump in polls nationwide and in key swing states. Biden's team seems to think that taunting Trump directly will be a way to reverse some of those polling trends. Now look, this actually is a very Sun Tzu strategy. If you read Sun Tzu, the author of Art of War, an ancient Chinese book on military strategy, they say if your enemy is quick to temper, enrage him. And maybe they believe that Trump might be quick to temper. So they want to poke the bear, right? Prod that hornet's nest. Or maybe it's a strategy of fighting without fighting, another Sun Tzu thing. Or in this case, maybe it's going to be campaigning without campaigning, right? Kind of like he did in 2020, right? Regardless, though, we're going to have to see how skilled Biden is at this. A lot of Trump's opponents have tried meeting him on that method he uses where he makes up names for people and just insults them. I know some people love it, some people don't like it, but it works. And actually, you saw Hillary Clinton try it. You saw a lot of people who try to run against Trump try it, and typically they're not as good at it, frankly. Trump has a weird skill with that. So we'll see how it works. If they can prod Trump into saying something really controversial, without a doubt, you can expect the media to jump on it, and they'll probably try to use it to tear him down. And so from the standpoint of media attacks, it may actually be somewhat of a working strategy. We'll see how it works. In other news, folks, over 100 January 6 cases are being reevaluated because guess what? They were over-sentenced. Politico says a federal appeals court panel ruled Friday that January 6 defendants who obstructed Congress in their work had their sentences improperly lengthened by judges who determined that they had interfered with the administration of justice. It says the decision could force district court judges in Washington, D.C. to recalculate and perhaps reduce the sentences of more than 100 January 6 rioters convicted of felony obstruction for their roles in the attack on the Capitol that threatened the transfer of power 3 years ago. It notes that federal sentencing guidelines encourage judges to apply the administration of justice enhancement to defendants who disrupt judicial proceedings like grand jury investigations or court hearings. The enhancement can increase recommended sentences by more than a year. Briefly on that, what this basically means is that the federal government was recommending a special enhancement to the charges. And many people who were arrested and charged and sentenced under, January 6 charges were, of course, taken in by that special, or let's say persecuted by that special enhancement. It turns out that special enhancement may not have been legally used. There's some problems with it, so they're going to reevaluate it. The issue is that it's the same D.C. court judges doing that reevaluation. And we've seen that the D.C. court judges who've been assigned to the J6 cases, one, they have not been releasing them to other parts of the country. Normally, in the normal administration of law, you would see judges, especially there's a lot of cases, allow people to stand trial in their hometowns or home cities or whatever else. The DC judges are making sure that they are the ones who prosecute every single case on this. They're not allowing any other judges to step in. And of course, we've seen that the jurors, the judges, seem to have really well-established biases on this. It's even been admitted by some of the people going against Trump in D.C. that you cannot get a fair trial in D.C. You can't get a fair trial there if you're a conservative, just plain and simple. Especially in a case like this that was so badly pushed by the media. You have almost zero chance when it comes to this of getting a jury pool that has not been tainted to some extent by media reports. But it says the Justice Department is weighing whether to appeal the ruling. An appeal would either send the issue to the full 11-member bench of the appeals court or to the Supreme Court. Personally, I doubt the Justice Department would risk that at this point. If the Justice Department appeals it further, they do risk this going to the Supreme Court. If it goes to the Supreme Court, very likely the Supreme Court is going to make a ruling that is not going to be in the Justice Department's favor when it comes to J6. And also, of course, frankly, again, the DC court is in its pockets. And so even if they reevaluate these cases, just my opinion, it's probably not going to do much to change things. Now, in other news, in other parts of the world, we could start seeing more new neighbors from Haiti. We can expect more Haitians to flee their country and may probably come to the United States. We saw this happening very often. The Haitians, though, caused the biggest stir in the press. You might remember with the migrant caravans when a whole lot of Haitians were photographed under a bridge waiting to illegally immigrate to the United States. And for some reason, it was the Haitians who got people up in arms. When the Haitian migrant caravan happened, the Biden administration actually took some action, and the Haitians were one of the very, very, very few groups who were to an extent forbidden from being able to get some of these different programs. And so the incentive of them to mass migrate to the United States came to a screeching halt. But that could change soon because Haiti is about to fall. The country is being overthrown right now. And an extremely violent gang had just broken out of prison there, a massive prison break, and they started haphazardly, just savagely murdering everybody. There are now reports of it trying to overthrow the government in Haiti. And there were reports of really horrific crimes, including indiscriminate killings and even cannibalism. The Daily Mail said that heavily armed gangs have tried to seize control of Haiti's main airport after 4,000 inmates escaped prison and started massacring people indiscriminately. They say shocking videos have emerged of men and women fleeing in fear as shots ring out across the Toussaint Louverture Airport, International Airport. The ensuing chaos has forced more than 15,000 people to flee their homes, many of which have been destroyed, leaving them living in camps. The attack on the airport, it says, marks a dramatic rise in gang violence in the country, Haiti, with groups exchanging gunfire with police and soldiers in the latest attack on key government sites. The gang's aim is to prevent Prime Minister Ariel Henry from returning to Haiti, where he is thought to be abroad. Now, this type of destabilization is spreading. And my guess is we're going to start seeing more and more of it because there's two sides to it, right? One is that you actually do have very powerful gangs in a lot of these countries that are fighting back against the governments, because in some of these countries you actually have the governments trying to actually enforce the law again. Others are going the opposite way. Mexico, under its communist government, they have a communist president now, is actually giving a relative free pass to the cartels and gangs and is actually trying to shift the blame of all the problems in the country to the United States. And of course, while doing that, facilitating mass illegal immigration to America, to the United States. Cuba is also doing very similar things. There have been reports of them previously emptying out like prisons and insane asylums, just like Venezuela is doing, and sending them to America. And of course, Venezuela is also sending their criminals here. Meaning some of these more communist countries are manipulating the open border, crisis and the migrant crisis in order to get rid of the people they don't want. They're sending here the people who possibly could be causing problems in their country. And you, of course, have other countries like El Salvador, Ecuador, and others who are trying now to go after the gangs. Argentina, for example, right? And you also have some in-between ones caught in the crossfire. The issue you have in Latin America almost across the board is it is becoming destabilized in many instances. Case in point, here is Cuba. Cuba right now is asking the United Nations for foreign aid, and they're saying they have food shortages. Remember the narrative in Cuba, just like any communist country. When the communism fails, they don't say communism has failed. They say capitalism has destroyed communism. They blame it on America. And because Cuba is playing the victim, they're saying the United Nations needs to help them. BBC News says that Cuba's government has for the first time asked the UN Food Program for help as food shortages on the communist-run island worsen. The World Food Program said it had received an unprecedented official request from the Cuban government for help providing powdered milk to children under 7 years of age. The request is a sign of the seriousness of Cuba's economic crisis, as well as a shortage of milk, fuel, and medicines that are also now running low. And again, remember what I've been saying. There's very likely a war brewing in Latin America. It is very, very likely, in my opinion, that Venezuela is going to invade Guyana. If Venezuela invades Guyana, Venezuela, of course, being under Maduro, formerly Chavez, they're a borderline communist country because of their leadership. They will very likely also get support from Lula in Brazil. Lula, of course, was in prison. The Supreme Court in Brazil took actions to make him so he could run for president again, and then took actions against the sitting president at the time, Bolsonaro, who was a conservative, and are now targeting Bolsonaro with criminal attacks and so on, just like they're going after Trump in the US. But what's happening now is that with Lula in power, he's very, very far left as well, communist. He was the one who helped create, of course, the Foro ao Sao Paulo with Cuba, working with the Sandinistas and other narco-terrorist organizations to create a lot of the leftist waves that swept Latin America. If, of course, this war takes place, you could expect Brazil under Lula to side with Venezuela under Maduro. And there's going to be a destabilization of the region. This, combined with the migrant crisis, is going to create the ripe grounds for many of this to take place. And of course, something else big is happening. Now, remember just before the attacks in Israel, where a group of Hamas terrorists crossed over the border, massacred people, then kidnapped people, thereby goading Israel to attack them and try to get the people back, causing, of course, the image of a, attack on Islam that is being used by Muslim terrorists in Iran to say that they have a right now to fight back against this. And of course, the flames of global terrorism are lit yet again. Well, just before all this happened, you might remember something important. The leader of the Palestinian Authority traveled to China and met personally with Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, right before those attacks happened. Very similarly, you might remember the heads of the Taliban went to China and met with Xi Jinping just before Biden pulled our troops out and just before the Taliban took over the country. In other words, it seems to be there's an international element playing into all of this. A lot of people have been saying, well, the Palestinian Authority is better than Hamas. But it turns out, as you would expect, the two are deeply linked, including financially. And it turns out the Palestinian Authority is even paying Hamas. The Washington Free Beacon said, as President Joe Biden pushes to empower the Palestinian Authority in the name of Middle East peace, the PA has committed millions of dollars to terrorists who were killed or captured while carrying out Hamas's October 7 attack on Israel and the resulting war. It notes, since October 7th, the PA, Palestinian Authority, has doubled down on its long-standing pay-for-slay policy, which Iran does as well, by the way, which gives salaries and benefits to Palestinians in prison for involvement in violence against Israel and to the families of those killed in the revolution against the Jewish state. The policy does not distinguish between terrorists and civilians. Iran, again, does the same thing. But based on Israel Defense Force estimates of enemy casualties and prisoners, the PA, Palestinian Authority, has put itself on the hook for more than $97 million in such payments for the more than 13,000 Hamas terrorists in the year following October 7, when the attack took place, of course. Now, back to America. Unaffordable homes, folks. You might have noticed the prices of homes going up and the price of, let's say, your paycheck not changing much, right? But it seems that now they're saying that the new, the rising costs in homes, it's the new normal. A lot of us are wondering, when's the housing market going to crash? When's it going to go down? They're taking actions to try to ensure that does not happen. And they're saying that rising interest rates, high costs of homes, get used to it. It's the new normal. NBC News says that mortgage rates are high and housing inventory is tight, but some experts see the market's deep freeze starting to thaw this spring. Now, they say for the last few years, limited housing inventory and low rates have put the housing market on ice. I wonder why there's a limited housing inventory. It's not like they've been bulldozing houses. It's not like we had problems with this. I wonder what is causing the squeeze on the housing market, which ironically is keeping the prices high or driving up the prices in many cases. Possibly it could be that the government is subsidizing housing costs and giving people money to buy and rent and so on to the millions of illegal immigrants they're letting in through our borders. I wonder if that is the reason. Obviously, if you have a limited supply of something and then you create competition for that limited supply by importing millions of new customers, prices are going to go up. It's basic economics, right? But they're saying that, of course, this and the rates have put the housing market in a difficult position. And they say, quote, many homeowners who'd otherwise be eager to sell have hesitated to shake off these so-called golden handcuffs of mortgage rates as low as 2 or 3%. They said it's finally starting to change, experts say, even though rates are much higher, climbing again past 7% in recent weeks. Again, even under a decently bad market, 2 to 3% would be bad. 7% is incredibly bad, and they want to keep it there. They say this, quote, markets are just kind of recalibrating for the reality, the new reality, that the Fed is not going to cut interest rates right away, said Greg McBride, Bankrate's chief financial analyst. For many buyers and sellers alike, it's beginning to sink in that we're not going back to 3 and 4% mortgage rates anytime soon, he's saying. Now, again, it's only a new normal so long as we flood the country with millions of new residents fighting over a limited supply of homes. And as government regulations prevent the rapid construction of new homes in order to accommodate the millions upon millions upon millions of people they're flooding the country with. And as the Federal Reserve also robs us blind through interest rates and printing of new money and inflation, and then tries to convince us that this is totally normal economics, which it is not. No, it is not normal, folks. It's not normal at all. This is not the way a healthy economy works. This is not the way a healthy country functions. In no case would this be considered normal, but they're saying it's normal. Briefly as well, there's some new reports that came out, including with some recent human trafficking charges, which have given details on something that I was telling you all about, but it was a missing piece in the puzzle, which is this. Remember, we were discussing how illegal immigrants entering the United States, the method of entry is this, through Biden's catch and release program. They enter in droves, oftentimes just through wide openings in the wall. They hand themselves over to Border Patrol. Border Patrol arrests them, takes them in, processes them. They even have an app you can download on your phone for this called CBP One, Customs and Border Protection One, where you can even make an appointment with Border Patrol when you're going to hand yourself in. That is how well run it is. It came out recently that Joe Biden is even flying over 300,000 people directly into the United States. That rather than, of course, have them enter the country illegally and then surrender themselves, our own government is paying for flights from foreign countries and just bringing them in directly. This was recently revealed. Of course, those of you watching Crossroads would have known this already. But this is the big kicker, the big missing piece in the puzzle, which is after these individuals hand themselves in, Customs and Border Protection processes them at processing facilities. Department of Homeland Security is part of that process. After they're done, within 72 hours, they put them on buses, bring them into America in like San Ysidro or Texas, wherever else, in San Diego, Texas, Arizona, wherever. and then they literally release them on the streets. I videotaped this whole process recently. I'm going to be showing that to you soon in a new documentary. But a missing piece of the puzzle is this. All the people coming off those buses have airplane tickets. They have airplane tickets, folks. And people are wondering, where did they get the tickets from? Who gave them these tickets? Who's paying for these tickets? Well, recent arrests in the United States of human traffickers have revealed where those airplane tickets are coming from. The law enforcement, they've revealed that when people are processed at the Department of Homeland Security facilities, they're given free passes by the Department of Homeland Security for free airline fare. They can fly for free because the Department of Homeland Security is giving them free passes for it. Meaning, if you're wondering who's doing it, our own government is doing it. If you're wondering who's paying for it, you are paying for it with your tax dollars. And so mystery solved, free flights within the United States for every illegal immigrant who is processed. And of course, they processed now over 7 million of them under Joe Biden alone. So mystery solved, folks. That said, before we jump into questions, today is Thursday, so that means the full episode for all of you on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. But if you want to access Epoch TV's special reports and documentaries, including the one I just announced, we're going to be releasing hopefully by the end of this month, and also my recent investigation of the secret biolab that was found in California that is only available on Epoch TV, EpochTV.com. So make sure you join us on Epoch TV, and by doing so, you also help support us continuing the show. So thank you for being here. I'll be releasing even more documentaries in the future. I'm working on a bunch, including the one on the border I've been mentioning. Link to join is in the description below. Let me show you a trailer from my recent investigation before we jump into questions.
Major gaps in regulations are allowing clandestine labs like the one in Reedley to operate.
Chinese laboratories just can't help themselves.
The more you look into it, the crazier it gets. I would ask, oh, what are you doing with the mice? Oh, well, we don't actually do that. It's someone else that does the experiment.
If the Chinese Communist Party wants to start a lab in the United States, there's no American law to stop them from doing it. All right, welcome back, and that said, let's jump into some questions. I got my laptop right here. Again, those of you wondering, I'm in a hotel right now. I'm still traveling. I've been working on this new investigation about what's happening at the U.S.-Mexico border with the migrant crisis. And of course, this investigation has brought me down to Panama. It's brought me to San Diego, Texas, Florida. It's been an interesting journey, and again, I'll be showing you the findings on that very soon. First question up from Rob Sanderson. You're saying, you can smuggle humans and drugs into the U.S. with impunity, but God forbid you smuggle in hydrofluorides. I know, right? I mean, if it wasn't so bad, it'd be funny. It's a bit of a slap in the face, isn't it? It really shows the nature of what they're doing. I mean, on that note, too, have you seen what's happening in New York? In New York now, where they've basically dismantled the police department. They got rid of stop and frisk, where police can stop you and search you. They've gotten rid of the organized crime unit to a good extent, meaning that gangs and stuff can operate with relative impunity. I think they brought some of that back recently. They made it so that police risk being arrested and charged if they have to arrest somebody and the person resists arrest, and they have to use force. In other words, they made it almost impossible for police to do their jobs. And what happens? Well, crime and chaos happens. And so what's the solution? New York is now deploying the National Guard into the subways. And the National Guard are stopping and frisking people. They're searching bags. Literally, the thing they got rid of that the police were doing, they're now having the National Guard do. And for some reason, they make it sound like this is normal. Why not just let the police do their jobs and you wouldn't need to bring in the military? They're enacting like pseudo martial law in New York City because of crime. And rather than just fix the problem, they're bringing in the military to fix it. It's wild, folks. Again, it's along these same lines. You can traffic fentanyl and other drugs, but you can't traffic in like, carbon or something, right? Seymour Butts, you're saying a couple years ago, a guy in my street was removing an old HVAC system, which is like, for the air conditioner systems of buildings, right? Was removing an old HVAC system and released the refrigerant into the air, and the EPA found out and fined him $10,000. Oh my gosh, that's wild. It's even more wild too, because it's just like this frankly imaginary crime as far as I'm concerned. It's wild stuff. Rosemary Schmidt, you're saying, welcome to communism. Did any of you want a law passed where they can jail you for not wanting a small percentage of idiots to run our country without asking the rest of us? Yeah, indeed, right? Back on that hydrofluorocarbons arrest that took place. On that note too, I think that something interesting there's something interesting I found out recently, which is, the Paris Climate Accord, a lot of it's based on that. Did you know that that's not even legally signed with the United States? Normally, if there's an international treaty with the United Nations, it requires a 2/3 vote from Congress. Under the Constitution, right? Under the Constitution, our own government cannot enter an international treaty unless they have 2/3 support from Congress. That is the law written in our Constitution. And guess what? Barack Obama changed that in a way that is questionably legal. Just like in his last days in office, he was issuing executive orders rather than going through the legislative process. They replicated the executive order model for international agreements. This is one of the reasons why America got pulled into all these crazy United Nations programs. Normally, again, you would call those treaties, and America cannot enter an international treaty unless Congress votes, and they have to have 2/3 of them voting. Barack Obama bypassed that through executive agreements, something that has no precedent. It has never happened before, and frankly is very questionably legal, and frankly should be challenged by Congress, in my opinion. The Paris Climate Accord is one of those. It's not technically legal in terms of how the country enters treaties. And of course, they only got around that by renaming the treaty as an accord. Same thing with the Global Compact on Migration, the international agreement that is facilitating mass illegal immigration with the United States, the United Nations, European partners, and many Latin American countries. The same thing. That is an international treaty. They don't call it a treaty because if it's a treaty, they need 2/3 vote from Congress to pass it. So rather than call it a treaty, they call it a global compact. They found this loophole within the Constitution. And frankly, I don't think it would hold up. I don't think it would hold up if somebody sued and it was brought to the Supreme Court, because that's not the way it works. This was Barack Obama changing the laws through loopholes and doing things that had never been done before. That was Barack Obama who did that. And again, if you understand the way they did it, it can be challenged, and I think it very easily could be challenged. And of course, the guy who was arrested for smuggling hydrofluorocarbons, it's based, of course, on the Paris Climate Accord partly, meaning if he can challenge the Paris Climate Accord and the fact that it was a treaty disguised as an accord, there's maybe a case there, frankly. Same thing with mass migration, of course, with the Global Compact on Migration. It could be challenged, actually, using that, I believe. Paul Novotny, you're saying illegals in California can now get a leg up 20% down to buy a house here. I saw. Not only, they're giving them first-time buyer loans and so on. Wild stuff. They're also giving them, like in New York, $10,000 refilled credit cards for things. In Detroit, they're giving them, was it $7,000 every 4 months or something like that to rent a home and then furnish it? It's wild. It's really wild. Actually, even in the budget, the budget omnibus, they have all these earmarks, like billions and billions of dollars in earmarks. And one of the earmarks would even give just billions of dollars to, rental assistance and so on, which makes me wonder, actually, if that's also for the illegal aliens. NF, you're saying, meanwhile, arrests of Jan 6 attendees have increased in the past 6 months. Actually, yes, that's also a very important point. They've been increasing the arrests of January 6ers. It's not like the first wave of people arrested was the beginning and the end of it. They're going after people still. They're still arresting people. And they're even extending it now to people who did not enter the building. That's one of the newest developments they're talking about. The Justice Department has made a point, publicly in a video, saying, up until now, it's mostly been people who entered the building. It's not guaranteed to stay that way. Meaning, of course, if you were at January 6th outside the building and you were merely, because again, the fence would have defined the boundaries of what would constitute trespassing. And if you had passed beyond the boundary of what constitutes trespassing, they are talking about charging those individuals all the same as the ones who actually entered the Capitol building. And again, as you mentioned, the arrests have increased. They've increased so much that it's actually gumming up the D.C. courts, which raises the question again of why the judges in Washington, D.C. are not allowing the cases to leave Washington and go to local courts where the individuals being charged are living. That would be normal legal practice, and normal legal practice in that regard is not being followed. And I'd say in many other regards is not being followed. Frankly, I don't think it's going to hold up. I do think this is going to be overturned eventually, but Americans will have to suffer this for at least another year and maybe 5 more years, depending on the way the elections go. Maria Eastwood, you're saying, I heard Biden is bringing illegals by plane right from their country. LOL, laugh out loud. Yes, that is true. It just got revealed that Biden is importing them by the hundreds of thousands, over 300,000. I want to say it was 320,000. But I can say without a doubt, it was over 300,000 that have been flown into the country directly from their home countries, and that has now been admitted by the Biden administration. It was one of the things that was suspected, but there was a lot of secrecy around it. You might remember that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was actually looking for answers on that, and they were attacking him for even asking about it. Something else that's interesting, the Global Compact on Migration even includes an information warfare branch to it as part of the agreement. Again, the system facilitating illegal mass migration is a United Nations agreement that our own government has signed on to, the Global Compact on Migration. And as part of that, not only do they establish financial channels, not only do they establish the systems to facilitate everything, the money, the pushing upwards towards America and into Europe, but they also include an element of media where they will educate journalists on this and even attack journalists who stand up against it. So if you're in Europe and you run a news outlet and, for example, you write an article critical of mass illegal migration, you will lose your government money. Because in Europe, it's very hard for media to exist without government money. In America, it's less of a problem. In fact, Epoch Times were 98% financed by readers, by subscriptions. And so we're very hard to silence, in other words. So it's all of you making this possible. It is subscriptions and all of you here who make Crossroads possible and who help Epoch Times do the work we do. So thank you so much. But back to that point, yeah, there's a lot we're not being told about this, but I do think the truth is going to come out very soon. Try one God, or Triune God, 1983. You're saying, why is Homeland Security involved? You're talking about, of course, the illegal mass migration. Yeah, Homeland Security is directly involved in the illegal mass migration into the United States. In particular, they have a role when individuals are brought to the processing facilities. This is the intermediary step between them illegally crossing into the United States and then being released into America. So basically, again, if you're an illegal alien, you download an app on your phone called CBP-1. You can schedule a time with Customs and Border Protection to hand yourself in. You can even schedule a flight in some instances. They will fly you in. This was known previously. I know for a lot of the media this is new, but we've been talking about it for a while. It's actually not new. We've been reporting on this. You schedule a time to come in, you go to the border and hand yourself over. Even if you did not schedule a time, you can still do it. It just makes it easier for you, so you know that there's a friendly Border Patrol agent waiting there to do the opposite of his job, which of course would normally make it a crime to give aid or comfort to people trafficking individuals into the country. Normally they would arrest people for doing this, but because of the changes in law, they're being made to conduct the very activities that they were taught and trained to arrest people for doing, helping facilitate mass illegal immigration, in this case, human trafficking. They take these individuals and then they bring them to the processing facilities. And at the processing facilities, they do things like do a background check, they take their biometrics, they make sure they're not gang members or whatever else, supposedly, right? We know that many gang members and terrorists are still getting through. So without a doubt, it's not completely effective, obviously. But once they're done with that, they give a little tag for their backpacks. They give them papers. I've personally seen this. In fact, I have it on video. And I'll be showing you, hopefully by the end of this month, in a new documentary. Once that process is done, we're now finding out the Department of Homeland Security also, according to newly released information, gives them free airplane tickets to anywhere they want to go in the United States. And then they're loaded up on a bus. I have videos of this as well. And they're just released onto the streets of America. And they have to find their way to the airport. They often release them at bus stations, or in San Diego, it was a trolley station. Trolley is kind of like our pseudo train. We call it the trolley there still. It's like a red train. And that can take you directly to the airport. And of course, there's also taxi drivers, sharks looking to take them there for a very high fee also. Let's see, MS Hoot to Chin or 2, you're saying, isn't what this administration is doing with immigration considered treasonous? It very easily could be. I think that if the tables were turned and the type of very aggressive legal attacks that we see from the Democrats against Republicans were flipped, you could very easily see the courts be able to at least make that interpretation. Because, of course, treason would mean that you are giving aid or comfort to enemies of the United States. And you could easily say that, for example, a lot of the communist governments that are publicly saying they want to tear down America, or even individuals in this country, maybe billionaires who've publicly stated that their greatest accomplishment would be to destroy the United States. I wonder who that could be. That these individuals have stated a public intent to destroy or tear down the United States and are giving aid and comfort to the individuals facilitating these programs. If you want to understand as well that gangs, narco-terrorist organizations, cartels are also a deep part of the process, being facilitated alongside the United Nations and the U.S. government in the mass movement of people to the United States, that even through RICO charges, you could charge members of our own government, NGOs, United Nations actors, and even members of our, again, branches of government operating within this. You could hit them with RICO, technically, right? RICO is a very broad crime. Racketeering, right? It's a very broad crime where if one individual is committing a crime and any individual connected to them, communicated or worked with them in any way, the individual committing a crime, that crime could extend to the entire group. That's the way RICO charges work. And if you understand that the drug cartels are fighting gang wars, they're murdering people, there's mass graves I've had reports of in Mexico where people can't pay the human traffickers and they just kill them on the spot. This is generally understood that you get wristbands from them. If you try to get past the cartels and just enter, they will kill you. In other words, murder, human trafficking, child sex trafficking, rape, robbery, extortion, slavery, the whole 9 yards connected with the criminal organizations involved in this, that because their crimes are being committed in connection with the United Nations, the U.S. government, and other things facilitating this, it would be questionably legal, but you could technically charge them with RICO and extend those charges to every person who played any role in that process. The door is open for it, frankly. I do think that there possibly could be a RICO charge and there'd be a real case of actually going after some of the individuals involved. That could possibly happen. Also, of course, the whole thing is technically illegal. It's done through a compact, which is a treaty in disguise. In other words, our own government signed an international agreement, bypassed Congress. You normally need a 2/3 vote for a treaty. They bypassed that process by calling it a compact rather than a treaty. That is a questionably legal action that was only started under Barack Obama. That alone could be enough to overturn this, and that alone could be used as, again, RICO to say that you're doing things illegal. You entered America into an illegal international agreement. This is not through the processes. And because of that, it is extra legal, it is criminal, and it's working hand in hand with criminal organizations. You could easily say that as well. And not only that too, but you can even point to foreign enemies of the United States, China, Russia, Iran, and the broader in Venezuela, and the broader context of what is called weaponization of migration, the use of mass migration as an actual weapon of war to destabilize a country, to bankrupt them, and to clear the way for international conflict. If, for example, Russia expands its wars, if China invades Taiwan, if Iran grows the war on terrorism, all of this could be used as examples, for example, that they may have fed this crisis, and through feeding it and growing it, are using it in a way that would constitute weaponized migration. And it could be treason in that case. You can actually charge people treason for that, I believe. Again, all of this would be a stretch. It would be It would be very controversial were that to happen, but it could be done, frankly. It actually could be done. California gal, you're saying, so if they blame America, capitalism, for the failure of communism, who will they blame if America becomes communistic? 40 chess. Yeah, so this is the narrative you will find among any communist group. When communism fails in Cuba, they say communism didn't fail. America destroyed the Cuban economy with tariffs and by not allowing their goods to leave the country and so on. That is why it failed. When the Soviet Union failed, they'd say it failed because of the economic war of the United States. That's why it failed. As the Chinese Communist Party right now is failing. A lot of people are saying it's not failing. It's failing because of the sanctions from the United States. In other words, they're suggesting that communism cannot survive without capitalism. Communism cannot survive without capitalism because communism is parasitic by nature. It needs a host to feed on. It works only so long as there is a wealthy individual to rob and then redistribute their wealth from. It's a parasite. It's a vampire. It's a tick. And it needs blood to drink to survive. It cannot survive on its own. Communism is like this. And of course, the issue is if capitalism were to go away, there'd be nothing to prop up communism anymore because communism would have nothing to feed on. And as we've seen, when you cut off the blood flow to these parasites, yes, they die. As we're seeing with any communist country that is cut off from being able to trade with capitalistic countries. Right? But yeah, joke's on us if we become communist too. I do think there are some people who want that in the U.S. Case in point, Barack Obama, starting his political campaign with Bill Ayers, a communist with the Weather Underground, which had publicly stated its intent to turn America into a communist country, divide America up, allow foreign governments to gain footholds and control over various parts of the country, thereby ruling us, and then also creating concentration camps where the Weather Underground publicly believed, again, this was in some of the cases that came out when they were charged. The same Weather Underground that was a terrorist communist organization that actually bombed the Capitol, actually wanted concentration camps where they planned to kill hundreds of millions of Americans. That Barack Obama, the one who, of course, was working very closely with Bill Ayers, that's the one, right? There are definitely some who, at least in the early days of their political careers, did seem to want communism. And of course, that would, of course, give some context maybe to the communistic policies that have been damaging this country, right? Meatball 5812, you're saying, Josh, do you think Michelle Obama is going to run for president? She's saying she won't. Frankly, the Democrats are in a tough place right now because they don't really have a good candidate. It's clear they do not want Biden to run for president. They do not want Biden to run for president. Again, the special counsel investigation into Joe Biden determined that Joe Biden is not mentally capable to stand trial. Remember what that said. Joe Biden knowingly committed a crime, according to the special counsel, as related to the crimes of his son, Hunter Biden, of course. And meaning that Joe Biden could possibly be criminally charged. We'll see how that works in terms of executive privilege and so on, him being president of the United States. But him not being charged is hinged on the idea that he is failing mentally. He is in mental decline. He is not all there. He's not operating with a full deck of cards. They're saying that he's so bad that he is incapable of standing trial in front of a jury. This is not me saying it. This is the special counsel saying it that was appointed by his own Justice Department under Merrick Garland. This is his administration saying this. And a lot of people, including myself, believe that maybe this is an attack from within his own party trying to get him out because he's not facing criminal charges on the grounds that he's incapable mentally of doing so. But if he's capable mentally of running for president of the United States, then he's probably capable of sitting in front of a jury as well. It looked like people were trying to push him out. Joe Biden doesn't seem like he's going to do it. He's staying in, and he would probably fight that tooth and nail. And actually, he would probably win because he could argue executive privilege. And frankly, he's probably calling the bluff of the Justice Department and whoever is behind this action because he probably knows they can't really take him down without damaging their own party. So Joe Biden is in like sin, right? But there is talk about other possible candidates. Michelle Obama was one of the ones being floated. That means Barack Obama can again campaign. And Barack Obama can speak well. He does have an ability to, woo the press. He's well spoken. And so, he could probably pull some voters. We'd see how well that would work. There was talk around Hillary Clinton coming back. Maybe she's their best option, frankly, just being honest. There was talk about Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom, though, the problem they're facing with him is we've seen how he polls when faced against Republicans. If you remember, Gavin Newsom almost lost a special election to Larry Elder in California. Larry Elder, who I know and respect, was of course running for governor in California against Gavin Newsom. Larry Elder almost beat Newsom, and many claim, including myself, that he probably would have won were it not for some of the funny business with the election systems. He had a real shot to it, and there was some funny business that messed with that a little bit. The Democrats would look at that because if Larry Elder almost beat Gavin Newsom, how did Larry Elder fare against the other Republican candidates? They of course took methods like trying to keep him off the ballot, so he didn't have a fair game with them. But he was polling fairly low. He was below like Gavin Newsom, he was below Ron DeSantis and stuff. He was pretty far down on the polls, meaning that Gavin Newsom would be about on that level. He would not be polling very well, and so based on that, I don't think they want Gavin Newsom either, frankly. Meaning they don't really have a good candidate. The Democrats don't really have a way to replace Biden. They don't have anybody, frankly. And so, we'll see where it goes for them. I think they're stuck with Biden, frankly. Commander McBragg, you're saying the American citizen is being forced to pay for their own demise. Yeah, we're being forced to buy the noose to hang ourselves. It's our own tax dollars being used to finance the destruction of cities and nations. Paulie AZ, you're saying, what do you think about San Fran talking about testing welfare receipts for drugs? I didn't see that one. Oh my gosh, but it doesn't surprise me one bit. I can 100% believe it. You're saying, will it ever pass? Is the government in San Fran feeling the real impact of liberal policies discussed on California Insider? Actually, no, I did hear some about this. They're doing this already in some areas. For example, they're saying, well, if a person is addicted to heroin or really deadly drugs, it's safer if we provide them an option for it. There are programs like that. You might remember when Joe Biden was accused of giving out crack pipes. Remember they had these kits they were giving out that included crack pipes? And people were joking that, did Hunter write this policy? Did Hunter come up with this one, Joe? Literally they had, okay, the context of it was this. Joe Biden was giving out his administration was giving out these kits for like safe drug use, right? And people were saying there are crack pipes in this. They're like, those are not crack pipes. They're like they're glass pipes that could be used to smoke crack. They could be used for other drugs as well. And so based on that fact that they're not technically crack pipes, but yes, you can use them to smoke crack if you so choose. It was that narrative that a lot of the fact checkers used to say the whole thing was fake. I'm not joking. But it was true. It was actually true that they were giving out these kits that included these glass pipes that you could use to smoke crack. Part of the anti-drug policy these days is not prevention. The policy now is safe use, and that's the way that they've gone. It's gone the opposite direction, and that's kind of the context of that, right? Zoran Radojevic, you're saying, get more jail time for hydrocarbon pollutants than murder -- drug / rape / assault. Crazy. And it is crazy. And it is true, actually. It sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not. There are cases where people have actually killed people and they get off on bail these days and face not very harsh crimes, depending on the age of the person and depending on the nature of the crime. There have been cases recently where people have even gotten off with murder with a relative slap on the wrist. Drugs are relatively not even prosecuted unless you're smuggling a large amount of them. They treat rape pretty seriously, but it also depends on who done it, because a lot of this is done based on the color of a person's skin these days. And we see, of course, illegal aliens committing rape, including of children in a lot of cases, and they don't seem to be getting serious repercussions from it. And in a lot of states, assault is not even really charged. In California, for example, assault, you can kind of get away with it because of the way that the DAs work. And so, yeah, you do face you face more risk to yourself if you smuggle hydrofluorocarbons used in air conditioners than you would with these very serious crimes. It's more dangerous to you legally than committing these types of crimes. Truth is liberating. You're saying, interesting that the federal government can order Texas to stop building barriers and send soldiers to tear down what they built while actually letting illegals through on video. Yeah, it's wild. In fact, in San Diego, in San Ysidro, which is actually close to where I grew up. I grew up in the Spring Valley, Santee area. Santee is a little more inland, but Spring Valley is right on the border. So it's my hometown, and it was shocking to see what was happening there. Really shocking. But we had an individual actually go with us into the mountains. We drove to one of the openings in the wall, and it's just this huge opening. They never finished building it, and you have people just streaming through. It was wild, folks. And then because the individual was able to get us access to this, we were able to also film while Border Patrol was basically, arresting and then taking people in to be processed. And then we also went to the area where they're just doing the catch and release, where they let them go on the streets. It's wild to see it yourself, and I will be showing it to all of you very soon, so stay tuned for that. Again, the documentary I'm working on about the border crisis should be out around the time of the end of this month, so stay tuned. That said, folks, I will see you again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And again, please don't forget to share this episode. Share this video. Help us get Crossroads out. Tell a friend or family member about the show. It really helps us. And that said, folks, thank you so much for being here. Please take care of yourselves. Stay informed and stay free. Thank you.